Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie Hell of a Summer 2023 in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Hell of a Summer 2023. We will cover what this movie is about, where you can watch it, and all the interesting facts behind the scenes. I will guide you through the technical departments, music, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget and box office details, along with a concise story overview and a short review of the plot. We will also discuss the star cast performances, who played which role, and the standout moments that make this film worth talking about. So make sure to watch this video till the end to get everything you need to know about Hell of a Summer 2023. Hell of a Summer is a slasher horror comedy film released in 2023, co-written and co-directed by Wolfhard and Bryk. The film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, where it received a lot of attention for its mix of humor, tension, and nostalgic homage to classic summer camp horror films of the 1980s. The movie takes a familiar horror setup and infuses it with youthful energy and dark comedy, making it appealing to both horror fans and casual viewers. The story is set in a quiet lakeside summer camp, where a group of teenage counselors gathers before campers arrive for the season. What starts as a typical summer adventure filled with laughter, music, and teenage mischief soon turns into a nightmare when a masked killer begins targeting the group one by one. The film follows the survivors as they try to uncover who the killer is and what dark secrets lie behind the bloody events taking place at the camp. One of the strongest aspects of Hell of a Summer is its cast. Wolfhard, best known for his role in Stranger Things, also stars in the film, bringing his natural charisma and comedic timing to the screen. Bryk delivers a solid performance as well, balancing both the serious and humorous moments with ease. The supporting cast features a group of young, talented actors who bring authenticity to their roles, portraying the fear, tension, and confusion that come with being trapped in a deadly situation. Each character has their own personality, making the group dynamic, interesting, and relatable. From a technical perspective, the movie is well shot, with impressive cinematography that captures both the beauty and isolation of the summer camp setting. The lighting and camera angles help create the right atmosphere for suspense, while still maintaining a visual style that feels fresh and modern. The editing is sharp and keeps the pacing tight, allowing the film to balance moments of humor with scenes of terror without losing rhythm. The music and sound design play an important role in enhancing the horror elements of the film. The soundtrack blends eerie tones with 80s-inspired tracks, giving the film a nostalgic feel that horror fans will recognize instantly. The background score builds tension effectively during chase scenes and sudden attacks, while moments of silence are used cleverly to heighten suspense. In terms of direction, Wolfhard and Bryk do an excellent job of keeping the tone consistent throughout the film. Their creative partnership results in a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously but still manages to deliver solid scares. The dialogue feels natural and occasionally witty, making the characters more believable. Their approach to the horror genre feels both respectful and refreshing, as they pay tribute to old-school slasher films while also introducing a modern twist that reflects today's youth culture. During pre-production, the filmmakers focused heavily on crafting a believable environment. The summer camp location was chosen carefully to reflect both nostalgia and isolation. The costumes and props were designed to resemble a retro setting while still appealing to modern audiences. Filming took place mostly outdoors, which brought certain challenges related to lighting and weather, but the production team managed to capture the perfect balance of realism and cinematic appeal. In post-production, the editing and sound mixing helped elevate the film's final quality. The visual effects are minimal but used effectively where needed, allowing practical effects and makeup to shine in the kill sequences. The movie maintains a consistent tone, never drifting too far into parody, even when the comedic elements are strong. Regarding budget and box office, Hell of a Summer was made on a modest budget compared to major studio horror films. However, it performed quite well upon release, especially among younger audiences and fans of Wolfhard. Its combination of horror and humor attracted both traditional horror enthusiasts and viewers looking for something entertaining yet suspenseful. Overall, Hell of a Summer 2023 is an engaging blend of slasher thrills, nostalgic charm, and youthful humor. It successfully captures the feeling of being young, scared, and unsure of who to trust. The performances are strong, the direction confident, and the atmosphere consistently tense yet entertaining. It may not reinvent the horror genre, but it offers a fun and well-crafted experience for those who enjoy campy scares mixed with sharp wit. If you're a fan of classic horror films like Friday the 13th or modern horror comedies such as Scream, then Hell of a Summer 2023 is a must-watch. Hell of a Summer is a 2023 horror comedy that unfolds as a bloodied, darkly funny take on classic summer camp slashers, while also delivering a tightly structured mystery about identity, responsibility, and the struggles of young adults trying to act mature. The story begins with the shocking murder of Camp Pineway's owners, John and Kathy, which sets an eerie and suspenseful tone. Soon after, a group of 11 counselors arrives early to prepare the camp for the upcoming season. Their excitement quickly turns into fear when they realize someone is stalking them through the woods, wearing a creepy devil mask and striking without warning. At the center of the story is 24-year-old Jason Hochberg, played by Fred Hechinger. Jason is a returning counselor who feels out of place among his teenage co-workers. He is mocked for his age and for taking things too seriously, yet he is the only one who seems to sense that something is terribly wrong. When Jason discovers a note hinting at an emergency involving the camp owners, he tries to warn the others, but they dismiss his concerns as overreacting. However, when one of the counselors, Demi, a social media-obsessed influencer, is found brutally murdered, panic sets in. Abby Quinn plays Claire, Jason's ex-girlfriend and the emotional core of the film. Her character is intelligent, cautious, and driven by a desire to protect others even when fear takes over. As the killings continue, Claire and Jason must confront their unresolved relationship while trying to figure out who the killer is. Pharaoh Wunatai delivers a standout performance as a counselor who tries to maintain order, while Pardis Saremi, Rosebud Baker, Adam Pally, and Billy Bryk contribute to the ensemble with humor and realism, keeping the tone balanced between tension and levity. Finn Wolfhard, who co-directed the film alongside Bryk, also appears in the cast, bringing his trademark intensity and wit. As night falls, paranoia spreads through the group. Every counselor becomes a suspect as secrets surface. Jealousies, past arguments, and unspoken rivalries start to tear the group apart. They attempt to search the campgrounds for clues while barricading themselves inside cabins, but the killer always seems one step ahead. The masked murderer's attacks grow increasingly violent and personal, forcing the survivors to question whether the killer is someone among them or an outsider tied to the camp's dark past. The movie gradually shifts from a simple slasher to a deeper exploration of responsibility and fear. Jason tries to prove he can lead and protect others, while Claire must decide whether to trust him again. Their dynamic adds emotional weight to the story, contrasting with the chaos around them. The film's climax takes place deep in the forest near the lake, where the remaining counselors make a final stand. In a brutal confrontation, the killer's identity is revealed, connecting back to the opening murders and exposing a tragic motive rooted in revenge and betrayal. Visually, Hell of a Summer makes great use of its isolated setting. The camera work emphasizes both the natural beauty and the lurking danger of the summer camp environment. The cinematography captures flickering flashlights, moonlit trees, and empty cabins that heighten the sense of dread. The editing maintains a steady pace, allowing moments of tension and sudden violence to hit hard. Practical effects and realistic makeup give the film a classic slasher feel, while the clean visuals and quick cuts keep it modern. The soundtrack mixes eerie ambient tones with 80s-inspired tracks, reinforcing the film's homage to old-school horror while adding a nostalgic atmosphere. The sound design is sharp, especially during chase scenes and jump scares, where silence and sudden noise are used effectively to jolt the audience. Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk's direction keeps the tone consistent. They blend dark comedy with genuine suspense, never letting the humor overshadow the horror. The dialogue feels natural and occasionally self-aware, acknowledging genre clichés without mocking them. This balance gives the movie a unique personality, standing somewhere between homage and reinvention. Hell of a Summer was made on a relatively modest budget but received strong attention at film festivals for its clever writing and confident direction. Critics praised its ensemble performances, energetic pacing, and ability to combine nostalgic horror with a modern voice. While it may not completely reinvent the slasher genre, it delivers an entertaining experience filled with tension, humor, and style. In summary, Hell of a Summer 2023 is a tightly crafted horror comedy that combines a suspenseful whodunit with nostalgic slasher thrills. Starring Fred Hechinger, Abby Quinn, Pharaoh Wunatai, Pardis Saremi, Rosebud Baker, Adam Pally, Billy Bryk, and Finn Wolfhard, it tells the story of a group of camp counselors trapped in a deadly game of survival against a masked killer. With its strong performances, sharp direction, and engaging mystery, the film stands out as both a tribute to classic camp horror and a fresh, modern entry in the genre. Hell of a Summer 2023 opens with an unsettling image that immediately establishes its tone. The camera drifts through the quiet woods of Camp Pineway just before dawn, capturing empty cabins, rustling trees, and the echo of distant water lapping at the shore. This eerie calm is broken by the first act of violence when camp owners John and Kathy are brutally murdered by an unseen assailant wearing a devil mask. The sequence is fast, brutal, and confusing, leaving the audience with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of dread that carries into the rest of the film. This serves as the inciting incident, setting off a chain of events that will unfold when the camp counselors arrive the following day. The setup begins with the arrival of 11 counselors, a mix of personalities who represent a modern take on the classic summer camp archetypes. Among them is Jason Hochberg, played by Fred Hechinger, a 24-year-old counselor who has returned for another season despite feeling disconnected from the younger, more carefree staff. His age and serious attitude make him an outsider among the group, especially compared to his ex-girlfriend Claire, played by Abby Quinn, who has moved on and seems more at ease with her surroundings. The group exchanges jokes, unpacks supplies, and prepares for the camp's opening, unaware that the grounds are no longer safe. The early scenes establish a light tone, using humor and youthful energy to make the setting feel believable before the tension begins. The narrative's first turning point arrives when Jason discovers a strange note referencing an emergency involving the camp's owners. This discovery shifts the mood from playful to uneasy, and Jason's attempts to warn the others are met with skepticism. They dismiss it as another one of his anxious overreactions, setting up the conflict between Jason's awareness and the group's denial. The inciting tension becomes personal for him, forcing him into a leadership role he doesn't fully understand. The rising action begins when one of the counselors, Demi, disappears after wandering off alone to film a social media video. Her body is later found mutilated near the docks, confirming that something horrific is happening. Panic spreads through the camp, and the group begins turning on one another. Suspicion builds as each counselor questions who could be responsible. Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk, who co-directed and appear in supporting roles, use this portion of the film to layer humor with suspense, alternating between group arguments and chilling sequences of isolation. The pacing tightens as the killer picks off more victims, each death escalating the fear and chaos. The midpoint of the film delivers a shocking twist. The counselors find evidence that the murders may be connected to the camp's past, specifically to a tragic incident involving a counselor who went missing years earlier. Old newspaper clippings and photos hidden in the main cabin suggest a motive tied to revenge. The audience begins to suspect that one of the current counselors might be related to that mystery. This revelation deepens the narrative, transforming it from a simple slasher story into a layered whodunit. The story maintains a linear structure but occasionally uses flashbacks and dreamlike imagery to reflect Jason's psychological unraveling. As night falls, the survivors split up to search for help and barricade themselves inside buildings. The rising tension leads to several standout moments, including a chase through the woods lit only by flashlights and a desperate confrontation in the mess hall that results in another counselor's death. These scenes showcase both the horror and the emotional breakdown of the group, emphasizing how fear strips away their composure and trust. As the story enters its final act, only a few characters remain alive, including Jason and Claire. The emotional peak arrives when Jason admits that his return to camp wasn't about nostalgia but about trying to fix what went wrong in his life after his breakup with Claire. This vulnerability humanizes him and redefines his arc from insecure follower to reluctant protector. The climax unfolds near the lake, where the masked killer ambushes them in a brutal fight. The killer's identity is revealed in a twist that ties directly back to the camp's opening murders, exposing a motive driven by resentment and grief rather than random violence. The finale is both tragic and cathartic. Jason and Claire confront the killer, and after a violent struggle, the attacker is defeated, but not without loss. The survivors are left traumatized, sitting in silence as dawn rises over the camp. The film ends with an ambiguous final image of the lake, calm once again, suggesting that the horror might not be over. Narratively, Hell of a Summer's structure is straightforward yet precise, with each act clearly defined by a shift in tone and stakes. The directors choose to reveal information gradually, letting the audience piece together the mystery alongside the characters. This decision heightens engagement and tension. Emotional peaks are tied not just to violence but to moments of honesty and fear, making the characters feel more human than typical slasher stereotypes. By the end, the film closes the loop it opened with its first scene. The calm of the forest returns, but it feels transformed, as if innocence has been permanently lost. Hell of a Summer 2023 uses its narrative rhythm and character-driven suspense to deliver both a thrilling horror experience and a surprisingly emotional story about growing up, regret, and survival. Hell of a Summer 2023 builds its horror around characters who feel like real people rather than archetypes, grounding its slasher chaos in human behavior and emotional vulnerability. The film's success depends largely on how these characters change under pressure, and how their relationships expose fears of failure, rejection, and growing up. Each of the main characters starts the film with a distinct worldview, and by the end, their survival or downfall depends on how much they confront or deny those inner truths. The protagonist, Jason Hochberg, played by Fred Hechinger, is the emotional core of the story. When the movie begins, Jason is a 24-year-old counselor returning to Camp Pineway for another season. He is older than the other counselors, which immediately isolates him socially. He wants to belong, to feel young again, and to prove that he can lead, but his insecurity keeps him defensive and awkward. Jason's dialogue early on often includes nervous jokes and attempts to take charge that come off as controlling rather than confident. His conflict is both external, against the masked killer, and internal, against his fear of irrelevance. What stands in his way is his own self-doubt and the perception others have of him as a failure who refuses to move on. As the murders begin, Jason's arc turns from comic to tragic. His initial goal, to fit in and gain respect, shifts into survival and protection. There is a moment midway through the film when Jason finds the body of a fellow counselor and, instead of running, forces himself to return to warn the others. This act, shot in close-up to capture his trembling hands and determined eyes, marks the first real sign of growth. By the finale, when Jason risks his life to save Claire, he has evolved from a self-conscious misfit into a reluctant leader. His transformation is not about heroism in the traditional sense but about emotional maturity. He finally stops trying to prove himself and instead acts out of conviction. Claire, played by Abby Quinn, begins the story as Jason's ex-girlfriend and moral counterpart. She is organized, pragmatic, and emotionally guarded. Claire wants stability and control in a setting that quickly becomes chaotic. Her emotional wall is both her strength and her flaw. Early scenes show her deflecting Jason's attempts to reconnect, suggesting lingering resentment but also an unwillingness to reopen old wounds. Her arc revolves around trust, learning when to let her defenses down and accept that vulnerability does not equal weakness. A subtle but revealing moment occurs after the second murder when Claire comforts another counselor, using calm logic to keep everyone focused. However, when she later finds herself alone in a cabin, her composure cracks, and she breaks down quietly before pulling herself together. That scene underscores the theme of suppressed emotion that defines her. In the climax, when Claire and Jason face the killer together, her decision to trust Jason again is not just a survival choice but an emotional resolution to their past. She learns that connection and strength can coexist. The supporting characters each reflect a part of the film's larger theme about youth, identity, and responsibility. Demi, the influencer counselor, represents the surface-level validation culture. Her obsession with social media masks loneliness and insecurity. Her death, staged in front of her camera, becomes both a horror spectacle and a critique of performance as self-worth. Pharaoh Wunatai's character brings comic relief but also integrity. He starts as someone who mocks the situation but becomes a voice of reason when panic spreads. His shift from sarcasm to sincerity mirrors the film's tonal transition from comedy to genuine fear. Billy Bryk and Finn Wolfhard, who co-directed the film, also appear as counselors whose dynamic balances humor and moral questioning. Bryk's character, a prankster hiding emotional trauma, has a moment of reckoning when he admits feeling invisible to the others, a confession that gives emotional weight to what could have been a flat supporting role. Wolfhard's role, smaller but pivotal, serves as a mirror to Jason's arc. Both are trying to be taken seriously but choose different paths. The antagonist, the masked killer, represents more than just physical danger. The devil mask and brutal killings symbolize the rage of buried resentment and the inability to let go of the past. The killer's motives, revealed in the final act, tie directly to the camp's history and the generational tension between youth and authority. The figure behind the mask is not a supernatural entity but a human consumed by grief and anger, reflecting how denial and repression can become monstrous when left unchecked. Character development in Hell of a Summer thrives on small gestures and dialogue rather than dramatic exposition. A sideways glance, a nervous laugh, or an awkward silence often communicates more than a scream. When Jason hesitates before entering the dark woods, only to push forward, that hesitation tells us everything about his fear and his resolve. When Claire finally holds Jason's hand near the end, the gesture symbolizes trust rebuilt through shared trauma. By the film's conclusion, those who survive are permanently changed. Jason gains a quiet confidence born of necessity, Claire softens her guarded nature, and the rest serve as haunting reminders of the cost of denial. The film closes with a lingering shot of Jason staring across the lake at sunrise, his expression weary but calm. It's a subtle confirmation that the journey has reshaped him from someone running from adulthood into someone ready to face it. Hell of a Summer uses its ensemble not as filler but as a reflection of different facets of youth. Each character's transformation, however brief, contributes to the film's layered exploration of fear, growth, and the loss of innocence. In the end, the real horror lies not just in the killings but in what the characters are forced to confront about themselves. Hell of a Summer 2023 thrives on its performances as much as its direction and script. The acting brings dimension to what could have easily been a predictable slasher film, grounding the genre tropes in genuine emotion and believable interaction. The film's ensemble cast balances humor, fear, and vulnerability with a natural rhythm that makes the horror feel lived in rather than staged. Each performer brings something distinctive, whether it is quiet realism, explosive intensity, or subtle irony. Fred Hechinger delivers a standout performance as Jason Hochberg, the awkward, insecure, and well-meaning counselor who anchors the story. Known for his ability to convey layered emotions, Hechinger embodies Jason as both a comedic figure and a tragic one. In the first act, he uses body language, slouched shoulders, nervous hand gestures, and hesitant eye contact, to portray a man trying to fit into a group that sees him as an outsider. His line delivery is careful and often self-deprecating, which sets up the social discomfort that defines his character. However, as the movie descends into chaos, Hechinger's energy shifts. He drops the comedic stiffness and begins speaking with clipped urgency, showing Jason's gradual transformation from a reluctant participant to a determined survivor. His performance reaches its emotional peak in a scene where he confesses to Claire that returning to the camp was about redemption, not nostalgia. The raw honesty of that moment gives the film unexpected emotional gravity. Abby Quinn, as Claire, provides a perfect counterbalance to Hechinger's nervous energy. Her performance is marked by restraint and precision. She plays Claire as competent and pragmatic, yet underneath her calm surface lies a subtle tension that slowly unravels as the murders escalate. Quinn's vocal tone is controlled, slightly detached at first, reflecting Claire's tendency to suppress emotion. But as fear and grief begin to overwhelm her, that detachment cracks. A key moment occurs when Claire finds the body of a fellow counselor and whispers, "We're not getting out of this," in a trembling voice that conveys both terror and acceptance. Quinn's quiet intensity makes Claire's gradual vulnerability deeply affecting. Her chemistry with Hechinger is one of the movie's emotional pillars. Their exchanges feel spontaneous, their silence is heavy with unspoken history. By the finale, when Claire decides to trust Jason again, the moment feels earned because both actors have carefully built it through understated gestures and eye contact rather than overt dialogue. Pharaoh Wu-Natai brings humor and humanity to his role as a counselor who begins the film as a jokester but ends as a voice of reason. His comedic timing is sharp, and his shift to seriousness later in the film feels organic rather than forced. Wu-Natai understands the rhythm of the dialogue, often breaking tension with humor just before fear takes over again. His physicality, quick movements, expressive reactions, and wide-eyed disbelief makes his scenes memorable. When he sacrifices himself to save another counselor, it hits harder because of how genuine his earlier levity felt. Billy Bryk, who co-directed the film, turns in a layered performance as a prankster with hidden depth. Bryk infuses his character with charm and sarcasm, but beneath that surface lies quiet sadness. One of his most effective scenes is a late-night conversation where he admits feeling invisible among the group. His voice falters just enough to make the confession believable, and his death later carries emotional weight because of that vulnerability. Bryk's performance also highlights the director's understanding of tonal balance. He can land a joke in one breath and break your heart in the next. Finn Wolfhard, who also co-directed, appears in a smaller but vital role. His presence adds an interesting tension because he embodies the kind of youthful confidence Jason lacks. Wolfhard's delivery is quick and clipped, giving his character an edge that contrasts well with Hechinger's awkwardness. His on-screen moments show why Wolfhard has become such a magnetic performer. His timing is impeccable, and even when the dialogue is minimal, his expressions communicate a mix of fear and defiance. Pardis Saremi, Rosebud Baker, and Adam Pally contribute strong supporting turns that enrich the group dynamic. Sarimi's performance is marked by sincerity. She gives her lines emotional depth even in brief appearances. Rosebud Baker stands out for her deadpan delivery, which adds understated humor to tense scenes. Adam Pally, usually known for his comedic work, surprises with a more subdued take, playing fear and confusion with believable restraint. Among the smaller roles, the most memorable is the influencer character Demi, whose obsession with filming everything becomes her downfall. The actress, though in the film briefly, makes the most of her screen time. She captures the hollow confidence of someone addicted to online validation, and her death sequence, performed with a mix of fear and disbelief, turns what could have been a stereotypical character into a commentary on performative identity. The ensemble's chemistry is one of the movie's greatest strengths. Even during group scenes filled with overlapping dialogue and panic, the actors play off each other naturally, creating a sense of genuine camaraderie and chaos. The filmmakers encourage improvisation, and it shows in the spontaneous rhythm of conversation and reactions. If there's a slight imbalance, it comes from a few secondary characters who don't get enough screen time to develop fully. Their deaths, while effective as horror beats, lack emotional impact compared to the main group. However, the strong core performances from Hechinger and Quinn compensate for this, ensuring the film's emotional arc remains intact. In the end, Hell of a Summer's performances elevate the material beyond typical slasher territory. Fred Hechinger brings soul and awkward sincerity, Abby Quinn grounds the film with emotional realism, Tfero Wunatai provides heart and humor, and Billy Bryk and Finn Wolfhard deliver energy and precision. The result is an ensemble that feels alive, believable, and deeply human even amid horror. The acting choices, small gestures, broken voices, and unspoken looks, turn the film into more than a campfire scare. They make it an emotionally charged exploration of fear, regret, and connection. In Hell of a Summer 2023, the direction by Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk serves as both the film's backbone and creative pulse, shaping it into a distinct blend of comedy, horror, and coming-of-age storytelling. As first-time feature directors, the duo brings a confident sense of tone and visual rhythm that balances humor with a sense of unease. From the opening frame, their style signals an understanding of classic slasher films while weaving in a playful, self-aware energy that keeps the audience engaged. Wolfhard and Bryk's directorial approach makes the film feel personal, youthful, and nostalgic, but with a modern awareness that prevents it from being purely derivative. One of the strongest aspects of their direction lies in how they establish atmosphere. The film opens with a serene yet slightly eerie summer camp setting that instantly transports viewers back to the world of 1980s-style horror, yet it is lit and shot in a way that feels fresh and current. They use wide shots to show the natural beauty of the environment, giving the camp a deceptive sense of peace, only to later contrast it with tight, anxiety-inducing framing once the suspense kicks in. The use of handheld camera work in tense moments heightens the feeling of chaos, while the still, symmetrical compositions in calmer scenes reflect the nostalgic tone. This visual balance mirrors the duality of the film itself, both homage and reinvention. The directors show strong instincts in pacing and tone. Hell of a Summer moves briskly without feeling rushed, a credit to how Wolfhard and Bryk manage transitions between humor and horror. Comedy often undermines tension in genre hybrids, but here, it feels intentional and controlled. Their comedic timing is sharp, especially in scenes that highlight the awkward dynamics between the camp counselors. The moments of levity not only entertain but also deepen character relationships, making the later tension more emotionally grounded. When violence and chaos erupt, the shift feels organic because the directors have already built a believable sense of camaraderie among the characters. The way Wolfhard and Bryk direct actors is another standout strength. Finn Wolfhard, also playing one of the leads, balances his dual roles seamlessly, guiding performances that feel natural and collaborative. Billy Bryk brings an understated humor that complements Wolfhard's intensity, and their chemistry behind the camera translates to the ensemble cast. Fred Hechinger as Jason delivers a particularly layered performance, which is likely shaped by the director's willingness to let scenes breathe and allow actors to play with subtext. Rather than pushing exaggerated reactions, Wolfhard and Bryk favor subtle, realistic interactions that make the emotional beats more relatable. They also have a clear appreciation for classic horror techniques. There are echoes of John Carpenter's deliberate pacing, Sam Raimi's playful energy, and Wes Craven's self-awareness, yet the film never feels like a carbon copy. Instead, the directors merge these influences into something distinctly their own, using atmosphere and irony rather than pure gore to maintain tension. Their decision to focus on character-driven suspense rather than over-reliance on jump scares gives the film a grounded edge. The camera often lingers on expressions rather than violence, letting fear and uncertainty build internally rather than visually shocking the audience. Their control over tone is especially impressive given the risks of mixing horror and comedy. The camp setting allows for moments of absurdity, but Wolfhard and Bryk always bring the story back to an emotional core. This focus on sincerity within chaos makes Hell of a Summer resonate beyond its genre. You can sense the director's affection for their characters and their desire to explore themes of growing up, facing mortality, and finding courage through friendship. It's a clever move that elevates the film from a simple parody to something with genuine emotional weight. Visually, the directors also demonstrate a keen eye for color and lighting. The warm golden tones of daytime scenes contrast sharply with the cool blues and deep shadows of night sequences. This visual dichotomy enhances the sense of foreboding and gives the film a painterly quality without feeling over-stylized. The decision to use practical effects over heavy CGI lends authenticity and pays tribute to the physical craftsmanship of 80s horror filmmaking. The editing style complements the direction perfectly, quick enough to maintain suspense but patient enough to let character moments land. Some may argue that a few sequences lean too heavily into stylization or comedic indulgence, momentarily diluting the fear factor, but these moments also show the filmmakers experimenting with rhythm and tone, testing boundaries rather than playing it safe. In a debut, such risks are commendable. Ultimately, the direction of Hell of a Summer 2023 is what transforms it from a nostalgic throwback into a fresh, memorable entry in modern horror comedy. Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk prove themselves not just as capable storytellers but as filmmakers with a distinct voice, able to merge homage, humor, and heart into a cohesive vision. Their confident choices in framing, pacing, and actor direction make the film stand out, turning what could have been a formulaic summer slasher into a vibrant, character-driven experience that lingers well after the credits roll. The cinematography of Hell of a Summer 2023 plays a central role in defining the film's tone and atmosphere, creating a visual identity that perfectly balances nostalgia, tension, and humor. The directors Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk, together with their cinematographer, use the camera not just as a recording device but as a storytelling instrument that mirrors the emotional rhythm of the film. Every frame feels intentionally crafted to evoke the feeling of a 1980s summer camp horror film while maintaining the crisp clarity and modern pacing of a contemporary production. The film's visual language begins with its use of light and color. Daytime scenes are bathed in golden sunlight, evoking warmth, freedom, and a carefree mood typical of youth and summer. This bright, nostalgic tone captures the playful side of the movie before the story takes its darker turn. As night falls, however, the color palette shifts dramatically. Warm tones give way to cooler blues, grays, and deep shadows that cloak the camp in an atmosphere of unease. The transition between light and dark mirrors the tonal shift from comedy to horror, visually reinforcing the emotional arc of the narrative. This interplay of light and shadow becomes a motif throughout the film, symbolizing innocence clashing with fear, and friendship tested by danger. The framing and camera movement in Hell of a Summer are equally thoughtful. Wide shots are frequently used to establish the geography of the camp, immersing the audience in the vastness of the environment while also emphasizing isolation. These shots often linger on forests, lakes, and open fields, giving the setting a deceptive tranquility. In contrast, tighter framing is employed during moments of tension, pulling the viewer into the claustrophobic world of the characters as danger draws closer. The camera frequently shifts from a steady observational style to kinetic handheld work, particularly in chase sequences or moments of panic, heightening the sense of unpredictability and chaos. One of the standout visual strategies of the film is its dynamic use of tracking shots. The cinematographer often follows characters through the campgrounds or wooded trails with fluid movement, creating a sense of continuous immersion. This approach builds suspense effectively, as the viewer feels part of the group's journey, never quite sure when danger might appear. During moments of stillness, however, the camera locks into place with symmetrical compositions reminiscent of classic horror imagery. This deliberate contrast between movement and stillness strengthens the tension. The audience is lulled into comfort by symmetry, only to be startled by abrupt shifts in motion or framing. Lighting design is another area where Hell of a Summer excels. The campfire sequences, for instance, are beautifully lit with a warm orange glow that flickers across the actors' faces, creating intimacy while suggesting the lurking darkness beyond the fire's reach. The practical lighting, lanterns, flashlights, and cabin lamps, adds authenticity and enhances the realism of nighttime scenes. When the horror elements escalate, the lighting becomes more expressive, with harsher contrasts, strobing effects, and silhouettes that distort perception. This careful manipulation of light is not just for aesthetics but also serves as a psychological cue. As the character's sense of safety dissolves, so too does the clarity of the visual world around them. Color grading plays an important role in sustaining the film's tone. Rather than opting for oversaturated colors common in many modern horror comedies, the cinematography maintains a restrained palette that feels earthy and natural, punctuated by bold flashes of red or neon to signal violence or emotional intensity. These visual accents not only draw the eye but also serve as narrative markers, subtly hinting at shifts in mood or perspective. The cinematographer's work also reflects a deep understanding of genre homage. Many shots recall the visual style of 1980s horror classics such as Friday the 13th or Sleepaway Camp, yet they are executed with a self-aware precision that feels modern rather than imitative. The film's use of negative space, allowing the audience to see what the characters cannot, is particularly effective in generating suspense. A quiet forest background, seemingly empty, often hides subtle movement or shadow that foreshadows approaching danger. This restrained tension-building technique pays off more effectively than direct jump scares, keeping the audience constantly alert. The film's visual storytelling also excels in character-driven moments. The cinematographer uses framing to express emotional distance or connection between characters. For example, early group scenes are often shot in inclusive wide angles that emphasize camaraderie, but as fear begins to separate the counselors, shots become tighter and more fragmented, visually representing their growing paranoia and distrust. In romantic or confessional scenes, the use of shallow depth of field isolates the characters, allowing emotion to dominate the frame while the background blurs into insignificance. Each of these visual choices enhances the film's psychological realism and makes even comedic scenes resonate with subtext. Several specific visual moments stand out as particularly memorable. The first nighttime chase through the woods, illuminated only by handheld flashlights, combines shaky realism with cinematic control. The use of silhouettes against moonlight creates haunting imagery that stays with the viewer. Another striking sequence is the film's climax, where lighting, movement, and sound converge in a visually chaotic yet emotionally clear confrontation, proving the cinematographer's command over both spectacle and storytelling. In the end, the cinematography of Hell of a Summer 2023 is not decorative, it is essential to the film's identity. The visual design captures the duality of nostalgia and fear, balancing a sense of youthful wonder with creeping dread. Every shot feels motivated by emotion and theme, making the film not only a visual treat but also a coherent narrative experience. Through its deliberate use of framing, lighting, and color, the cinematography transforms the familiar slasher setting into something emotionally textured and visually rich, ensuring that Hell of a Summer 2023 lingers in memory long after the story concludes. The editing and pacing of Hell of a Summer 2023 are key elements that define how the film unfolds its blend of horror and comedy, maintaining a dynamic rhythm that keeps viewers engaged while respecting moments of tension and stillness. Editors have played a crucial role in shaping the tone, using precise timing, controlled cuts, and rhythmic transitions to balance humor, suspense, and emotional beats. The editing feels intentional, carefully tuned to support the dual nature of the movie, a lighthearted summer adventure that gradually morphs into a dark, thrilling slasher. From the opening sequence, the film establishes its rhythm with confidence. The early scenes at the summer camp are edited with a loose, almost playful tempo. Quick montages of counselors interacting, setting up the camp, and sharing jokes build a sense of camaraderie and nostalgia. These scenes flow effortlessly, using rhythmic cross-cutting and short dissolves that mirror the carefree spirit of summer. The pacing here is brisk but never rushed, allowing the audience to settle into the setting and get to know the characters before the story takes its darker turns. Once the tone shifts toward suspense, the editing adapts smoothly. Cuts become tighter, scenes extend longer, and silence begins to play a crucial role. The film doesn't rely heavily on fast-paced cutting typical of modern horror. Instead, it often lets the tension breathe. The editors understand that fear builds in anticipation, not surprise. By lingering just a second longer on a shadowy hallway or a nervous glance, the film generates anxiety without resorting to over-editing. This sense of restraint shows a maturity that many debut features lack. In several sequences, cross-cutting is used effectively to heighten tension. For example, when multiple characters are spread across different areas of the camp, the editing alternates between their perspectives, creating a sense of simultaneous danger and unpredictability. Each cut carries momentum, pulling the audience between threads of suspense until the moment of convergence delivers emotional impact. The rhythm of these sequences recalls classic horror pacing, but with a slightly faster modern edge that suits younger audiences. The editors also play skillfully with rhythm across the film's acts. The first act moves quickly, emphasizing humor and energy to draw viewers in. The second act slows down, allowing atmosphere and character tension to take center stage. The third act accelerates sharply as chaos erupts, but even in these action-heavy moments, the cuts remain clean and readable. The camera work and editing synchronize perfectly, ensuring that the viewer can follow the physical geography of the space without confusion. This clarity is essential in horror films, and Hell of a Summer achieves it through disciplined shot selection and well-timed transitions. The film's use of montage deserves special mention. Several short sequences are edited together to compress time, such as characters preparing for the night or cleaning up after camp activities. These montages inject humor and levity, acting as rhythm resets between heavier sequences. They also reflect the director's appreciation for 1980s storytelling tropes, where montages served both narrative and emotional purposes. The transitions between these lighthearted sections and the darker moments are handled delicately, often using sound bridges or fades to maintain tonal continuity. The editors avoid jarring tonal shifts, ensuring that the audience feels a gradual descent into the horror rather than an abrupt plunge. Silence and stillness are also used as powerful tools. Rather than filling every moment with background music or rapid edits, the film allows quiet to dominate in key scenes. Long, unbroken takes of characters listening to distant noises or staring into the darkness amplify unease. This editing choice gives the movie a cinematic rhythm closer to suspense classics like Halloween or The Blair Witch Project, where absence of sound becomes its own kind of tension. The restraint to trust silence is a sign of confidence in the material. At times, however, the pacing briefly falters. A few comedic exchanges linger slightly too long, stretching scenes that might have benefited from tighter cuts. While these moments contribute to character depth, they occasionally slow the film's forward drive. In contrast, some of the horror sequences in the final act accelerate too quickly, resolving conflicts before the emotional tension can fully register. These are minor issues in an otherwise well-balanced edit, but demonstrate how delicate the relationship between timing and emotion can be. Flashbacks and visual callbacks are integrated with precision, providing backstory without confusing the narrative. When the film revisits earlier moments through memory or reflection, the editors use subtle visual cues, like desaturated tones or softer focus, to differentiate them from the present timeline. These choices help maintain clarity and enhance emotional resonance without breaking the flow. The editing also respects character perspective. By cutting in rhythm with emotional beats rather than purely visual ones, the audience experiences the story through the character's eyes. During a moment of fear or realization, the camera lingers just long enough to register internal change before moving on. This psychological pacing strengthens the audience's empathy and connection to the characters. In the climactic sequences, rapid cutting, overlapping sounds, and flashes of light are employed to convey panic and disorientation. Yet even amid chaos, the editors maintain visual logic, ensuring that each cut advances tension rather than confusing it. The final moments of the film slow back down, giving viewers a chance to absorb the aftermath. The transition from frantic action to quiet reflection closes the film with balance and closure. Overall, the editing and pacing of Hell of a Summer 2023 serve as the invisible hand guiding the audience's emotional journey. The film's rhythm, alternating between energy and stillness, laughter and fear, is crafted with precision. The editors manage to capture the essence of a summer gone wrong, shaping time in a way that enhances both story and suspense. Every cut feels motivated, every pause intentional, proving that the editing in Hell of a Summer 2023 is not just functional but integral to the film's storytelling power. The soundtrack and score of Hell of a Summer 2023 are vital components of the film's identity, shaping its emotional tone and guiding the audience through every tonal shift. In a movie that walks the fine line between horror, comedy, and coming-of-age storytelling, the music acts as a unifying thread that ties these elements together. The choices made in both the original score and the use of licensed songs reflect a deep understanding of how sound can enhance atmosphere, heighten emotion, and even inject humor at just the right moments. From the very first scene, the film establishes its musical language with confidence. The opening credits roll over a nostalgic, synth-driven track reminiscent of 1980s horror soundtracks, instantly signaling to the viewer that this story will blend retro style with modern sensibility. The pulsing bass lines, analog textures, and reverb-heavy percussion evoke memories of classic films like Friday the 13th and The Lost Boys, grounding the audience in a familiar cinematic mood. Yet, the composition feels fresh, with cleaner production and rhythmic variation that fits contemporary pacing. This opening theme becomes a recurring motif throughout the film, subtly resurfacing in different arrangements to mirror the emotional states of the characters. The score, composed with precision and thematic awareness, plays a crucial role in shaping the film's shifting tones. During the lighthearted early sequences at summer camp, the music leans into upbeat indie rock and pop-inspired cues. Acoustic guitars, tambourines, and light percussion accompany scenes of friendship and banter, giving the camp setting a warm, carefree energy. These cues aren't merely decorative, they serve as emotional grounding points, making the later descent into darkness more jarring and impactful. As the story pivots towards suspense, the score evolves with it. The cheerful melodies fade into eerie synth drones and minimalistic string arrangements. Silence becomes an active presence, often more effective than sound. In moments where danger lurks just beyond the character's awareness, the absence of music amplifies unease, forcing the audience to focus on every rustle, creak, and breath. This disciplined use of restraint demonstrates how the composers understand horror as a genre where quiet can be just as powerful as sound. When the horror elements finally erupt, the score surges with intensity. Distorted electronics, low-frequency pulses, and rhythmic pounding heighten the sense of chaos and fear. Yet, even in its loudest moments, the music maintains clarity. It enhances tension without overwhelming it. The editors and sound designers synchronize the score tightly with on-screen action, ensuring that musical stingers and crescendos align with emotional peaks rather than cheap jump scares. This balance gives the film a rhythmic cohesion where every sound feels motivated by the story. One of the most effective musical techniques in Hell of a Summer 2023 is the use of recurring motifs linked to characters. Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk's characters each have subtle musical signatures woven into the score. For instance, Jason, played by Fred Hechinger, is often accompanied by a soft, melancholic melody that hints at his underlying vulnerability. As the story progresses, this theme transforms, growing darker and more fragmented, mirroring his psychological unraveling. In contrast, scenes featuring the group together often introduce layered harmonies, symbolizing unity and friendship. These recurring cues create subconscious emotional continuity, allowing viewers to feel shifts in tone even before the characters fully experience them. The licensed music selections are equally thoughtful, offering a blend of nostalgic and modern influences that mirror the film's tone. Songs from indie and alternative genres punctuate key moments, such as campfire sing-alongs, driving sequences, or bonding scenes, adding authenticity and relatability. The inclusion of period-inspired tracks also roots the movie in a timeless space, blurring the line between the 1980s aesthetic and contemporary storytelling. The music choices never feel forced or purely for nostalgia. Instead, they enhance character depth and emotional realism. For instance, a late-night scene of reflection might use a hauntingly slow cover of a pop song, underscoring loneliness and loss without needing dialogue. The balance between score and diegetic sound, music that characters themselves hear, is handled with skill. Camp radio tunes and background chatter often fade seamlessly into the non-diegetic score, creating smooth transitions that keep viewers immersed. This blending technique strengthens the film's rhythm and prevents tonal dissonance between scenes of humor and horror. The sound design complements the score perfectly, with ambient noises such as rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and water lapping at the shore working in harmony with the music to sustain mood. The layering of sound ensures that every auditory detail contributes to atmosphere, from the faint hum of electricity in cabins to the sharp sting of sudden silence before a scare. There are moments where the score briefly overplays its hand, particularly in a few comedic sequences where upbeat tracks slightly undercut suspense. However, these are rare and seem to reflect intentional tonal experimentation rather than misjudgment. The film's overall soundscape remains remarkably cohesive, maintaining emotional authenticity across shifts in genre. The climactic scenes feature the most striking integration of music and action. As chaos unfolds, the score alternates between heart-pounding percussion and dissonant synth chords, building unbearable tension before resolving into a haunting melody that closes the film on a reflective note. This final cue, echoing the film's opening theme, serves as a musical bookend, a reminder of innocence lost and experiences gained. By the time the credits roll, the audience feels as though the music has carried them through every stage of the story's emotional evolution. In essence, the soundtrack and score of Hell of a Summer 2023 are more than background elements. They are integral storytelling tools that shape mood, rhythm, and emotion. The music captures the spirit of nostalgia while injecting modern energy, guiding viewers from laughter to fear and finally to contemplation. Through haunting motifs, clever use of silence, and emotionally charged melodies, the film's soundscape transforms each scene into something deeper, ensuring that Hell of a Summer 2023 resonates not only visually but sonically long after the final note fades. Hell of a Summer 2023 may appear on the surface as a playful horror comedy set at a summer camp, but beneath its energetic pace and genre thrills lies a thoughtful exploration of youth, fear, and identity. The film uses its slasher framework not simply to deliver scares but to reflect on what it means to grow up in a world that often feels unpredictable, unfair, and dangerous. Its themes of friendship, courage, self-discovery, and moral responsibility unfold naturally through the story's humor and horror, creating a coming-of-age narrative wrapped in genre entertainment. At its core, the film is about transition, between childhood and adulthood, safety and danger, innocence and experience. The summer camp setting, a familiar symbol of freedom and youth, becomes a stage for testing personal limits. The counselors arrive carefree, full of jokes and confidence, but as chaos begins to unfold, they are forced to confront their fears and moral boundaries. Through this shift, the movie examines how quickly innocence can erode when survival becomes the priority. What begins as a fun summer turns into a metaphor for the loss of youthful illusion, making the film as much an emotional journey as a physical one. Identity is another major theme running throughout the film. Each character represents a different facet of teenage identity: self-doubt, overconfidence, rebellion, or quiet introspection. Jason, played by Hechinger, embodies the struggle between vulnerability and masculinity. His arc is about learning that strength isn't measured by aggression or bravado, but by the ability to face fear and protect others. Finn Wolfhard's character, Chris, on the other hand, reflects a different kind of identity crisis. Someone trying to prove maturity through control and decision-making but realizing that leadership means more than just giving orders. Their friendship becomes a microcosm of youthful uncertainty and emotional growth. The film also plays with the theme of fear, not just as a reaction to physical danger but as an internal force. Each character's fear reveals something deeper: fear of rejection, of being alone, of not being good enough. The horror elements externalize these emotions, turning psychological anxieties into physical threats. When characters run from the killer, they are symbolically running from their own insecurities. This clever layering gives the movie emotional depth that goes beyond the typical slasher formula. Fear, in this sense, becomes both the antagonist and the catalyst for transformation. The directors also use the theme of morality to question how people behave when rules disappear. When faced with survival, the characters are forced to make choices that test their ethics and relationships. Who do you save first, yourself or your friend? When is violence justified? These questions are presented subtly through action rather than dialogue. The story doesn't lecture, it lets the characters' decisions reveal their values. This moral ambiguity makes the movie more thought-provoking than most horror comedies, allowing for interpretation rather than clear answers. Another underlying message in Hell of a Summer is the power of unity and friendship. The film's ensemble dynamic shows how human connection can serve as both strength and vulnerability. The group's cohesion is tested as fear sets in, but their eventual teamwork becomes the key to survival. This theme is reinforced visually through group framing and dialogue exchanges that evolve from playful banter to genuine care. By the film's climax, survival isn't about individual heroism, it's about collective trust and empathy. Love and loyalty emerge as emotional counterpoints to fear and chaos. The movie also explores generational disillusionment, a subtle but significant thread. The young characters represent a generation growing up with both skepticism and hope, trying to define themselves in a world shaped by uncertainty. The summer camp, once a place of safety and tradition, becomes a metaphor for societal expectations that no longer hold true. Through humor and horror, the film suggests that each generation must rebuild its own version of courage and identity. There's also a recurring commentary on nostalgia and the dangers of idealizing the past. By paying homage to 1980s horror, the movie invites viewers to reflect on how cultural myths about adolescence and heroism have evolved. It reminds us that while nostalgia can be comforting, it can also blind us to new realities. The directors seem aware that they're not just reviving an old genre, they're reinterpreting it for a modern audience that understands both its thrills and its flaws. Visually, the film communicates its themes with precision. The contrast between day and night symbolizes the duality between innocence and darkness. Bright daylight scenes filled with laughter slowly give way to shadowy, tense compositions that mirror the character's loss of security. Even the recurring use of reflections and mirrors underscores the idea of self-recognition. Each character must face who they really are when stripped of safety. These visual echoes make the film's thematic content resonate without the need for overt exposition. The film's humor also serves as a thematic device. It functions as a coping mechanism, reflecting how young people use irony and laughter to mask fear or confusion. Jokes that once sounded careless begin to carry weight as the situation worsens, illustrating how humor can both protect and expose vulnerability. The tonal shifts between laughter and terror mirror real-life emotional complexity, making the film feel authentic despite its fantastical premise. Not every thematic thread lands perfectly. Some ideas, such as hints of revenge or redemption, remain underdeveloped, overshadowed by the ensemble structure. Yet even in its imperfections, the film's thematic ambition is clear. It wants to say something about growing up, about facing chaos, and about the thin line between bravery and recklessness. The message is simple but resonant. Fear may reveal our worst instincts, but it also shows us who we truly are. Ultimately, Hell of a Summer 2023 uses its slasher framework to explore universal truths about identity, friendship, and courage. Beneath the blood and laughs lies a surprisingly sincere story about growing up in a world that can turn dangerous without warning. Through its blend of irony, emotion, and visual storytelling, the film delivers a thematic experience that lingers, reminding audiences that sometimes the scariest part of growing up is not what happens to you, but what it forces you to become. Hell of a Summer 2023 is not a film that leans heavily on visual effects, but the moments where VFX and CGI do appear are crafted with care and restraint, serving the story rather than overpowering it. As a hybrid between horror, comedy, and coming-of-age adventure, the movie balances its grounded summer camp setting with bursts of stylized violence and atmospheric visual cues that heighten its tension. Rather than relying on overblown spectacle, the filmmakers use subtle enhancements and digital touch-ups to make the practical effects feel more vivid, blending realism with cinematic flair. The directors, Wolfhard and Bryk, approach the film's effects with an understanding of old-school horror tradition. They prefer practical gore, prosthetics, and on-set stunts over computer-generated visuals. Still, modern post-production techniques are evident in several sequences where the lighting, environmental manipulation, and digital layering enhance the camp's mood. For instance, night scenes often feature an eerie haze that gives the forest an unsettling life of its own. The fog drifting through the trees and the flickering campfire glows are not entirely natural. They are digitally deepened to amplify the sense of unease. This kind of visual work is quiet but effective, keeping viewers immersed without making them aware of the technology behind it. One of the most noticeable uses of CGI comes during the film's central confrontation scenes. While the slasher-style kills and chases rely on physical performance and makeup effects, minor digital adjustments are made to accentuate the impact, blood spray, reflections in blades, or the illusion of wounds that appear too clean for pure prosthetics. These enhancements are executed tastefully, ensuring that the gore remains visceral but never cartoonish. The filmmakers clearly wanted the horror to feel tactile, and by merging practical and digital methods, they maintain that gritty authenticity. The compositing work also deserves attention, especially in scenes involving multiple characters in confined or chaotic spaces. When the campgrounds descend into chaos, some shots use digital compositing to combine multiple takes or background layers, giving the illusion of a seamless, continuous environment. It's not flashy, but it's technically precise, maintaining continuity across complex movement and lighting conditions. The audience never feels detached from the geography of the setting, a credit to careful VFX integration that supports storytelling clarity. Another example of effective visual trickery occurs in sequences that manipulate perspective and atmosphere to build dread. The movie occasionally shifts into heightened visual moments where the environment itself seems to breathe or distort. Subtle camera effects, color grading, and digital warping give certain scenes an uncanny feeling, suggesting psychological rather than literal horror. These moments are enhanced through post-production VFX, but they never feel artificial because they are rooted in the character's emotions. This restraint, knowing when to enhance and when to let natural texture dominate, is a major reason why the film's visuals resonate. In contrast to many modern horror films that depend on CGI monsters or exaggerated supernatural imagery, Hell of a Summer keeps things grounded. Even when visual effects are employed, they are used to heighten realism rather than escape it. The most impressive work arguably comes from the blending of practical gore with digital cleanup. Rather than creating effects that scream for attention, the film polishes the rough edges of its physical work to maintain a consistent tone. This gives the production an organic texture that matches its nostalgic tone, a loving nod to classic slasher aesthetics while benefiting from modern precision. Lighting also plays a major role in how the visual effects come across. The campfire scenes, moonlit woods, and flashlights cutting through fog are all enhanced through digital grading. The post-production color work integrates with minimal CGI elements to create a heightened sense of space. Shadows move naturally, reflections feel real, and the environment has a cinematic glow that sells the illusion of isolation. These enhancements are subtle, yet they shape the audience's emotional reaction more than most overt effects could. There are, however, moments where the CGI shows its seams. In a few quick shots during chase sequences, digital motion blur and background replacement feel slightly artificial, especially when the camera pans quickly through the forest. The realism dips momentarily, reminding viewers that the environment has been digitally assisted. These moments are minor and forgivable, especially since the film's ambition doesn't rely on heavy spectacle. Still, they stand out in contrast to the otherwise grounded aesthetic. The visual effects also complement the film's humor. During exaggerated or absurd moments, such as a character overreacting to a jump scare or an intentionally dramatic death, the use of quick digital flourishes adds a layer of irony. A sudden flash of exaggerated blood or an unnatural slow-motion effect feels intentional, almost like a wink at the audience. This use of effects as comedic punctuation rather than mere decoration shows an understanding of tone that is rare in genre films. One particularly memorable visual moment is the final act's atmospheric build-up. As the camp transforms from a place of nostalgia into a site of terror, lighting and digital smoke interplay beautifully to create a sense of surreal decay. The final confrontation benefits from enhanced shadows and ambient flicker that make the forest appear alive. This scene demonstrates how visual effects, even when minimal, can deeply influence mood and symbolism. Overall, the CGI and VFX in Hell of a Summer 2023 serve the narrative with purpose and restraint. The digital work never overshadows the characters or emotional core. Instead, it supports the film's themes of fear, confusion, and transformation. The blending of practical effects, environmental augmentation, and compositing creates a seamless visual language that feels modern yet nostalgic. The result is a film where technology and artistry coexist, proving that the most effective visual effects are not the ones you notice, but the ones that make you forget they're there. The set design and locations in Hell of a Summer 2023 play a defining role in shaping its tone and immersing the audience in its eerie yet nostalgic world. The film's production design successfully blends the carefree energy of a summer camp with the underlying dread of horror, creating a setting that feels authentic, lived in, and thematically cohesive. Every cabin, trail, and prop is carefully chosen to communicate both familiarity and danger, reflecting the film's balance between coming-of-age adventure and slasher suspense. The majority of the movie unfolds at a secluded summer camp nestled deep in the woods, and this setting does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to atmosphere. Rather than building artificial environments, the filmmakers rely heavily on real outdoor locations. This choice lends the movie a tangible sense of place. Rough textures of wooden cabins, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the sound of leaves moving in the wind, all contribute to the film's immersive realism. The production team shot much of the film in Ontario, Canada, taking advantage of the dense forests and natural lakes that capture the quintessential North American camp vibe. The authenticity of these locations roots the story in a recognizable reality, making the horror elements that much more striking when they appear. The camp itself feels both welcoming and haunting. During the day, the design highlights the charm of rustic life, weathered wood structures, old picnic tables, canoes, bunk beds, and handmade signage that give off the nostalgic glow of youth. But when night falls, the same setting transforms into a claustrophobic trap. The flickering campfire light reveals dark corners and shadows, turning familiar spaces into menacing zones. This duality is achieved not through elaborate design, but through clever use of space and lighting. The production design supports the narrative's tonal shifts, allowing the same location to embody innocence in one moment and terror in the next. Inside the cabins, the attention to detail is particularly strong. Each bunkhouse looks distinct, filled with props that suggest backstory without exposition. Posters, flashlights, sleeping bags, and old radios feel naturally placed, reflecting the personalities of the young campers. The designers avoid making the environment too polished, maintaining the slight messiness that makes it believable. This helps the audience connect emotionally with the characters, grounding the story even as it becomes more violent and absurd. The communal spaces, the mess hall, the dock, and the campfire area, serve as visual anchors throughout the film. The mess hall, for instance, is dressed with vintage summer camp memorabilia that suggests decades of activity. Old pennants, worn benches, and faded banners evoke a sense of history, implying that generations have passed through these halls. This historical layering adds depth to the setting, making it feel like a real place with a past, rather than a backdrop built for a movie. The use of the forest itself as its set is one of the film's greatest achievements. Nature becomes a character. The tall trees, winding trails, and shifting light patterns create a natural maze where characters can vanish and reappear. The geography of the camp is clear enough to orient viewers but disorienting enough to create suspense when needed. In several sequences, the camera moves through the forest in long, unbroken shots, emphasizing the isolation of the setting and the vulnerability of the characters. These natural elements, combined with minimal artificial intervention, strengthen the film's tension organically. The lake also plays an important role in the visual storytelling. It represents calm and reflection early on, then becomes a site of danger as the story unfolds. The design team uses the water's reflective surface as both a literal and symbolic element. Props like canoes, oars, and lanterns give the scenes texture and realism, but they also become tools for survival or symbols of escape. The production design understands how to turn ordinary camp items into meaningful objects. When it comes to interiors, the film maintains a cohesive visual identity. The color palette of the sets, earthy browns, deep greens, and muted yellows, reinforces the natural environment and grounds the story in a nostalgic past. The designers use worn materials rather than shiny new ones, ensuring that everything feels aged but functional. Even the props show signs of use: chipped paint, scuffed floors, and rusty hinges. These details build authenticity subconsciously, making the world believable without calling attention to the design itself. Beyond the camp, there are brief glimpses of the outside world, including roads, small-town buildings, and vehicles that situate the story in a believable reality. These moments of transition from civilization to wilderness underscore the isolation that defines the main setting. The contrast between modern spaces and the old-fashioned camp structures also mirrors the film's thematic clash between youthful innocence and primal fear. The filmmaker's decision to rely on real-world locations instead of soundstage builds gives Hell of a Summer a refreshing tactile quality. Natural imperfections, uneven terrain, unpredictable lighting, and weather shifts add spontaneity that enhances the film's mood. The set design team embraced these variables instead of fighting them, using nature's unpredictability as part of the story's tension. Even simple objects like camp badges, maps, and signage are given narrative weight. The inclusion of vintage-style props gives the film a timeless feel, placing it somewhere between nostalgia and the present day. The overall production design successfully balances simplicity with symbolism. Every detail serves to immerse viewers in a specific mood, nostalgia mixed with dread. The camp feels like a real place that could exist in memory or nightmare. Its authenticity allows the film's themes of fear, friendship, and chaos to resonate more deeply. The spaces evolve with the story, open and full of laughter at the beginning, constricted and threatening by the end. In essence, the set design and locations in Hell of a Summer 2023 achieve something many larger budget films fail to do. They create a world that feels both cinematic and lived in. The environments are not just places where the action happens, they are reflections of the story's emotional shifts. By marrying natural settings with thoughtful design, the film's production team builds an atmosphere that is immersive, believable, and deeply tied to the characters' experiences. The dialogue and script in Hell of a Summer 2023 stand as one of the film's strongest foundations, blending humor, tension, and character-driven realism in a way that feels true to both its horror and comedy roots. Co-written by Wolfhard and Bryk, the screenplay captures the awkward energy and emotional honesty of teenage life while weaving in the clever pacing and self-awareness typical of modern horror comedies. The writing displays a strong understanding of tone, knowing when to be funny, when to be quiet, and when to let fear or confusion drive the rhythm of a scene. From the opening act, the dialogue establishes an authentic youth vernacular that feels organic rather than forced. The conversations between the camp counselors, played by Wolfhard, Bryk, and their co-stars, flow with the easy banter of people who have known each other for years. Their exchanges are laced with sarcasm, teasing, and bits of awkward flirting that give life to the characters before the tension begins to build. Unlike many horror films where dialogue serves mainly as exposition, Hell of a Summer uses conversation to explore dynamics and personality. A throwaway joke or argument can reveal insecurities or loyalties, allowing the audience to form attachments before the chaos begins. One of the screenplay's most effective qualities is its rhythm. The dialogue rarely feels overstuffed. Instead, it allows for pauses and silences that communicate as much as the words do. The filmmakers understand that in horror, what isn't said often creates more tension than direct explanation. In several scenes, especially when the characters begin to suspect danger, the silence between lines becomes loaded with unease. The pauses, hesitant glances, and half-finished thoughts all speak volumes about fear and confusion. This restraint in writing gives the film a sense of maturity, even as it embraces humor. The humor itself is sharp and often rooted in character rather than punchlines. The script finds comedy in natural interactions, youthful exaggeration, and timing rather than forced quips. The banter between the counselors feels like genuine friendship. They tease one another not because the script demands jokes, but because that's how people their age communicate. These moments of levity make the later violence and tension more impactful, grounding the film in a recognizable emotional world before it spirals into chaos. Still, the film never lets its humor undermine its sense of threat. When the story pivots into darker territory, the tone shift is smooth because the dialogue adjusts accordingly. The jokes fade into nervous laughter, the arguments turn desperate, and the once casual chatter becomes filled with subtext. This evolution in speech mirrors the emotional transformation of the characters. What starts as lighthearted banter becomes fragmented and fearful communication, a reflection of how trauma and danger strip away social pretense. The film's dialogue also plays a key role in defining its themes. Beneath the surface, Hell of a Summer deals with questions of maturity, identity, and self-perception. Many conversations circle around ideas of responsibility, ego, and growing up, often through humor. Lines that might sound throwaway, about not wanting to be treated like kids or pretending to be in control, actually underscore deeper insecurities about adulthood and self-worth. The writers manage to weave these ideas into the script without sounding preachy or overt. Subtext is the tool of choice, and it's used effectively. The film's emotional peaks are rarely delivered through speeches or monologues. Instead, meaning arises from contrast between what characters say and what they don't. A scene where two characters talk about an old camp memory doubles as a confession about fear of change. Another argument about leadership masks feelings of guilt. These layers give the film a richness that rewards attentive viewers. Another highlight of the script is how it uses ensemble dialogue. Rather than giving each character isolated moments, the film often allows multiple voices to overlap. This overlapping dialogue technique mimics the chaos of real conversation and gives the movie a sense of naturalism. It also builds energy during group scenes, particularly in the middle section when tensions start rising. The confusion of people talking over one another mirrors their growing panic and lack of control. In these moments, the dialogue becomes a form of sound design, part rhythm, part character study. However, not every line lands perfectly. At times, especially in the first act, the script leans slightly too hard into self-aware humor. A few lines feel like they're written for an audience rather than for the characters themselves. This meta-quality isn't disastrous, it fits within the film's playful tone, but occasionally it risks breaking immersion. The film works best when it trusts subtlety, letting emotion or tension build naturally rather than winking too directly at the viewer. The balance between sincerity and irony is delicate, and while the screenplay mostly nails it, a few scenes could have benefited from trimming or rewriting to sustain dramatic momentum. The script's structure also deserves recognition. The pacing of the dialogue aligns with the editing and narrative beats, ensuring that each act feels distinct yet cohesive. Early scenes are longer and conversational, giving space for world-building and relationship development. As the danger increases, dialogue becomes clipped, urgent, and fragmented, mirroring the character's emotional unraveling. This shift in verbal rhythm enhances the film's pacing and tension without relying on constant visual action. Another strength is the way dialogue integrates seamlessly with performance. Finn Wolfhard and Bryk, who not only wrote but also star in the film, understand the material from both sides of the camera. Their line delivery reflects the script's tonal precision, dry humor mixed with genuine vulnerability. The natural chemistry between cast members further elevates the dialogue, making it feel improvised at times even though it's tightly scripted. In a film that juggles comedy, horror, and coming-of-age storytelling, the writing must maintain tonal balance, and Hell of a Summer succeeds on that front. Its dialogue is sharp yet believable, its subtext thoughtful, and its silence is meaningful. While a handful of lines flirt with over-explanation or modern irony, the script mostly trusts its audience to infer meaning rather than spelling everything out. The result is a screenplay that feels fresh, emotionally intelligent, and deeply attuned to its characters. Hell of a Summer 2023 proves that good writing in genre cinema doesn't need to be pretentious, it just needs to sound human. Hell of a Summer 2023 walks an intriguing line between horror, comedy, and coming-of-age drama, blending familiar slasher tropes with a sharp sense of self-awareness. It does not entirely reinvent the horror genre, but it confidently reinterprets it through a modern, character-driven lens. The film's hybrid nature, part nostalgic throwback, part satirical commentary, makes it stand out in an era saturated with formulaic thrillers. Directed and co-written by Wolfhard and Bryk, the movie is both an homage to classic summer camp slashers of the 1980s and a reflection on how those stories fit into today's cultural landscape. What makes Hell of a Summer unique is how it manages to honor the hallmarks of traditional horror while injecting humor and heart without sacrificing tension. The slasher genre has certain non-negotiable expectations: isolation, youthful protagonists, a lurking threat, and an escalating series of confrontations. This film checks those boxes, but it reshapes them through tone and character. Instead of leaning solely on gore or shock, it relies on atmosphere, interpersonal dynamics, and irony. It's clear that Wolfhard and Bryk understand what made films like Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp iconic, but they approach the material with a Gen Z sensibility that trades cynicism for curiosity. The setup, a group of counselors returning to a camp to relive their glory days only to encounter violence, is instantly recognizable, yet the film doesn't treat it as cliché. Instead, it uses that familiarity to explore character-driven storytelling. The horror elements are grounded in real fears: growing up, losing identity, and facing disillusionment. By using genre structure as a metaphor for adolescence, the film deepens what might otherwise be a conventional premise. This layering gives it a hybrid appeal, functioning both as a nostalgic slasher and as a coming-of-age reflection. In terms of genre rhythm, Hell of a Summer plays with expectation. The opening act lures the audience in with humor and nostalgia, almost to the point where viewers might forget they're watching a horror film. The early scenes focus on playful dialogue, social tension, and awkward camaraderie among the characters. This lulls the audience into comfort before the tone shifts. When the horror arrives, it's abrupt but earned, using contrast as a storytelling tool. This approach mimics the feeling of a real summer, sun-drenched joy suddenly clouded by dread. Such tonal manipulation is difficult to pull off, but the film succeeds by maintaining emotional consistency even when genres collide. The film's horror set pieces respect the essentials of slasher filmmaking: stock and chase sequences, isolated kills, and the creeping dread of being hunted. However, the execution leans more toward suspense and unease than graphic brutality. Practical effects and suggestion take precedence over gore, which is a deliberate stylistic choice. This restraint aligns the film more with psychological tension than exploitation, echoing the slower burn intensity of early John Carpenter or Wes Craven works. Fans expecting relentless violence may find the approach understated, but for others, it offers a refreshing change from the modern trend of shock for shock's sake. The comedy elements function as both relief and commentary. Hell of a Summer uses humor to puncture genre expectations without mocking them. The jokes arise naturally from character behavior rather than breaking the fourth wall. In this way, the film distinguishes itself from meta-horror projects like Scream, which rely on overt genre self-reference. Here, the laughs feel organic, making the horror moments more effective when they finally arrive. This tonal balance is one of the film's key achievements. The audience never feels whiplashed between comedy and fear. Instead, both exist within the same emotional reality. From a dramatic standpoint, the film also performs well. Beneath the slasher mechanics lies a surprisingly thoughtful story about identity and belonging. The genre framework becomes a vessel for examining how young adults confront growing pains and insecurity. The camp setting serves as a symbolic crossroads between innocence and experience, nostalgia and disillusionment. By embedding emotional truth within horror tropes, the filmmakers elevate the genre beyond simple thrills. Still, Hell of a Summer doesn't completely escape the gravitational pull of genre convention. Some beats are predictably familiar: the isolation of the group, the gradual body count, and the climactic confrontation. These moments play out with expected rhythm, and while they're executed with technical skill, they occasionally feel safe. The film shines most when it risks tonal or narrative surprises, such as subverting who becomes the victim or flipping character archetypes. For example, the typical final girl trope is reimagined here, shifting focus toward male vulnerability and friendship rather than romantic or moral survival. This reconfiguration breathes new life into a well-worn formula. Visually and structurally, the film honors genre tradition. The lighting design, color palette, and pacing pay homage to 1980s horror aesthetics, yet the cinematography has a modern crispness. The movie doesn't parody the past, it modernizes it. The framing of chase scenes, the use of practical locations, and the ambient sound design all work together to create a tactile sense of dread that feels classic but contemporary. Genre enthusiasts will recognize the familiar ingredients, but they'll also appreciate the subtle evolution in tone and perspective. In terms of audience expectation, Hell of a Summer walks a fine line. Hardcore horror fans might wish for more visceral scares, while casual viewers may find the balance between humor and suspense more engaging. The filmmakers seem aware of this duality and embrace it rather than trying to satisfy everyone. The result is a film that feels confident in its identity, a horror-comedy hybrid that prioritizes emotional resonance and stylistic precision over pure genre thrills. The film's success lies in its ability to acknowledge horror tradition without being trapped by it. It uses the genre's recognizable architecture as scaffolding for character exploration and tonal experimentation. By doing so, Hell of a Summer 2023 both honors and updates the slasher form, delivering a movie that is familiar enough to satisfy genre purists yet inventive enough to intrigue a broader audience. It demonstrates that genre execution doesn't have to mean repetition, it can mean reinterpretation, and this film achieves that with charm, intelligence, and heart. Hell of a Summer 2023, directed by Wolfhard and Bryk, is more than just a nostalgic slasher film. Beneath its chaotic humor, self-aware tone, and blood-soaked tension lies a deeper layer of cultural and generational commentary that speaks directly to today's youth and the fractured society they inhabit. It's a film that uses horror not just as entertainment, but as a mirror reflecting social anxieties, cultural divides, and the growing disconnection between people trying to define their identities in an unpredictable world. At first glance, Hell of a Summer appears to be a light-hearted homage to the 1980s and 1990s horror classics. It channels familiar tropes, summer camp settings, a masked killer, and a group of teenagers whose insecurities and reckless decisions seal their fate. Yet, beneath that structure lies sharp social commentary about modern adolescence, masculinity, and the pressures of belonging. The young characters are written as hyper-aware products of social media culture, constantly balancing irony with authenticity, humor with fear, and rebellion with conformity. This duality reflects a generation caught between self-expression and the fear of judgment. One of the key themes running through the movie is the generational tension between youth and authority. The film pokes fun at adults who dismiss the struggles of young people, while also highlighting how those same teens often lack direction or moral grounding. The camp counselors are exaggerated caricatures of Gen Z personalities, socially conscious yet self-absorbed, compassionate yet performative. This portrayal speaks to a wider cultural shift where social validation has replaced genuine human connection, and activism can sometimes feel more aesthetic than meaningful. Through its ensemble cast, the movie also explores gender expectations and toxic masculinity, often in ironic and comedic ways. Wolfhard's character embodies a young man unsure of his place in a changing social landscape, caught between outdated masculine ideals and the pressure to appear emotionally intelligent. The film cleverly contrasts his awkward attempts to fit in with the confident, independent female characters who are just as flawed, showing that identity crises affect everyone, regardless of gender. Hell of a Summer also touches on class and privilege, albeit subtly. The summer camp becomes a microcosm of society, where privilege dictates power dynamics. Characters who come from wealth and stability often exhibit entitlement, while others feel trapped by their lack of opportunity. This dynamic fuels tension and resentment, particularly as the killer's motives start to unfold. The idea that violence can stem from social exclusion or unresolved trauma ties the film's horror elements to real-world emotional struggles, making the story feel surprisingly grounded. Another interesting aspect is the film's commentary on nostalgia itself. By referencing and recreating old-school slasher aesthetics, Hell of a Summer asks whether our obsession with the past prevents us from evolving. It mocks the idea of trying to relive simpler times while ignoring the progress or pain that shaped modern youth culture. This self-awareness becomes part of the movie's identity, bridging the gap between homage and critique. On a cultural level, the film captures the uncertainty of a generation defined by information overload and emotional burnout. Every character is searching for meaning in chaos, distracted by irony and humor to mask their fear of failure or rejection. This mirrors real-world behavior patterns, especially in younger audiences accustomed to digital communication and the constant performance of identity online. Even the film's violence seems symbolic, a metaphor for how emotional pain and suppressed anger can erupt when empathy fails. Where some horror films use gore purely for shock, Hell of a Summer uses it to reveal deeper truths about vulnerability and repression. The killer's anonymity and motives are deliberately ambiguous, encouraging viewers to see the violence not as random, but as an expression of collective frustration bubbling beneath the surface of a disconnected society. The social commentary also extends to the way the film handles diversity and inclusion. It approaches representation with humor but avoids tokenism by letting characters feel real rather than idealized. Each personality, no matter how exaggerated, reflects a type of person we've seen in real life, from the socially anxious introvert to the overconfident influencer. This authenticity gives the film's message more weight and resonance. Ultimately, Hell of a Summer 2023 works as both a fun throwback slasher and a sharp reflection of current social realities. It doesn't lecture its audience but instead uses humor and horror to comment on identity, loneliness, and the pressure to perform in a world that demands constant visibility. By turning the classic summer camp setting into a battlefield of modern insecurities, Wolfhard and Bryk have crafted a story that feels both timeless and distinctly of this moment. The film's social and cultural commentary is not just clever, it's the heartbeat of the movie, making its scares and satire feel equally relevant to the American audience it aims to entertain and provoke. Hell of a Summer 2023 is the kind of movie that thrives on audience energy. Directed by Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk, it's built to entertain, provoke, and spark conversation long after the credits roll. It's part horror comedy, part nostalgia trip, and part meta-commentary on what it means to be young and restless in a chaotic world. The filmmakers clearly designed the experience with engagement in mind, creating moments that elicit laughter, fear, and reflection in equal measure. For audiences, this is not just a movie to watch, it's one to react to, discuss, and revisit. The film's opening immediately sets the tone for active engagement. The way it introduces the summer camp environment feels deceptively calm before the chaos erupts. Viewers are drawn in by the playful banter among the counselors and campers, and that sense of easy camaraderie makes the eventual violence hit harder. The early scenes invite laughter and recognition. Inside jokes about pop culture, awkward teenage flirting, and exaggerated camp traditions all feel familiar to anyone who has lived through youth's strange mix of confidence and insecurity. These relatable touches make the audience care, which is key when the slasher elements begin to unfold. One of the movie's strongest engagement points comes from its balance of horror and humor. The directors clearly understand timing, crafting moments where a joke undercuts fear just enough to release tension without breaking immersion. There's a particularly memorable scene involving a poorly executed prank that turns dark in an instant. The transition from laughter to shock is so sharp that viewers can't help but gasp, and it's one of the sequences people are likely to talk about after leaving the theater. That combination of tone shifts keeps the audience guessing and emotionally alert throughout. For fans of the horror genre, there are plenty of signature moments designed to provoke strong reactions. The killer's reveal scenes are constructed with a mix of suspense and absurdity that invite multiple interpretations. Rather than going for straightforward jump scares, Wolfhard and Bryk play with misdirection and build tension through silence and framing. Some viewers will find themselves gripping their seats, while others might laugh nervously at how self-aware the film can be. This push and pull between terror and irony makes for a communal viewing experience, one where audiences feed off each other's reactions. Emotional engagement also comes from the film's exploration of identity and vulnerability. Amid all the slasher chaos, there are quiet scenes that allow the characters to express fear, guilt, or longing. A nighttime conversation by the campfire, where two characters admit their insecurities, stands out as one of the movie's emotional anchors. It humanizes the ensemble and gives weight to their later struggles. These quieter beats are what make the film resonate beyond its genre thrills. They create empathy, something rare in horror comedy hybrids. The film also rewards attentive viewers with subtle details and Easter eggs that enhance rewatchability. From background jokes on posters to hints about the killer's motives, Hell of a Summer encourages audiences to look closer on a second or third viewing. Fans of classic slasher films will spot references to genre staples, but these nods never feel forced. Instead, they build a shared language between the filmmakers and the audience, creating the kind of movie that horror communities love to analyze and debate online. In terms of scenes that invite discussion, the ending will undoubtedly be the biggest talking point. It's ambiguous enough to allow for multiple interpretations. Some will see it as a darkly comedic twist, others as a tragic commentary on misplaced loyalty or self-delusion. That ambiguity is deliberate, giving audiences something to unpack and argue about. Online forums and social media discussions are likely to dissect the final moments frame by frame, generating theories about hidden meanings or symbolic messages. On the lighter side, certain moments in the film are practically made to be turned into GIFs and memes. The exaggerated reactions of the characters, the ridiculous one-liners delivered with deadpan sincerity, and the absurd visual gags all lend themselves to viral sharing. The movie's playful energy ensures that fans will continue quoting lines and recreating moments in fan edits and TikTok clips. This digital afterlife keeps the movie relevant long after its release. Sound design and music also play a key role in how audiences engage emotionally. The shifts between silence and upbeat tracks often manipulate viewers' expectations, creating audible reactions in theaters, collective gasps, nervous laughter, or even cheers during key scenes. Those moments of shared emotion are what turn a movie screening into an experience rather than just a viewing. Ultimately, Hell of a Summer 2023 is engineered for audience participation. It's a film that thrives on unpredictability and tension, rewarding both casual viewers and those who pay attention to every frame. Some will laugh, others will scream, and many will debate what it all means. It is that blend of excitement, curiosity, and connection that makes it stand out in today's cinematic landscape. For American audiences in particular, the movie's cultural tone, humor, and character dynamics feel both familiar and fresh, like rediscovering the thrill of a summer night where anything could happen. Hell of a Summer 2023 can be best understood when compared to other films within the horror comedy and slasher genres, as well as the director's own previous work. Directed by Wolfhard and Bryk, the film draws inspiration from classic summer camp slashers like Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp, and Cabin Fever, while also reflecting elements of modern horror comedy such as The Babysitter and Ready or Not. By examining these influences, we can see how Hell of a Summer honors tradition, experiments with genre conventions, and occasionally stumbles in execution. In terms of homage, the film clearly channels the spirit of 1980s slashers. The summer camp setting, isolated environment, and escalating body count are all staples of that era. Like Friday the 13th, Hell of a Summer uses the forest and lakeside setting to create both beauty and menace, employing long tracking shots through trees, shadowy cabins, and eerie nighttime sequences to build suspense. The filmmakers emulate the simplicity and effectiveness of classic horror pacing, where tension is steadily escalated before delivering sudden shocks. Similarly, the film's practical effects, gore, and prop design reflect the tactile realism of earlier slashers. However, unlike the older films, Hell of a Summer injects a distinctly modern sensibility. The dialogue is self-aware and layered, blending comedy, meta-commentary, and character-driven humor, reminiscent of movies like Scream or The Babysitter. The characters are not just archetypes, they possess distinct personalities, insecurities, and relational dynamics. This aligns more with contemporary horror's trend toward ensemble characterization and emotional investment, ensuring the audience cares about their fates rather than seeing them as mere fodder for suspense. One area where the film differentiates itself is in its hybridization of tone. Many classic slashers relied solely on fear and suspense, punctuated occasionally with dark humor. Hell of a Summer intentionally oscillates between levity and horror, creating a tonal push and pull reminiscent of Ready or Not, where absurd situations and witty dialogue coexist with genuine danger. The film's comedic beats, while sometimes exaggerated, serve a dual purpose. They humanize the characters and provide contrast that heightens the horror moments. The director's prior work provides additional context for comparison. Wolfhard and Bryk, primarily known for acting and independent projects, bring a fresh perspective that combines genre reverence with youthful energy. Their understanding of both performance and writing allows them to craft characters that feel authentic, in contrast to earlier, more formulaic slashers where characterization was often secondary. This gives Hell of a Summer a slightly indie flavor, differentiating it from big-budget horror franchises that prioritize spectacle over character development. However, in some areas, the film's ambition occasionally outpaces its execution. While the tonal shifts are inventive, certain sequences struggle to maintain cohesion. Moments of rapid comedy followed immediately by intense horror can feel jarring if the audience is unprepared, and a few narrative beats lean on genre familiarity rather than innovation. Compared to films like Scream, which perfected the balance between meta-humor and suspense, Hell of a Summer sometimes overestimates the audience's willingness to accept abrupt shifts. The film also compares interestingly to Cabin in the Woods, another meta-slasher. Both films comment on genre tropes and use self-awareness as a storytelling tool. Where Cabin in the Woods presents a highly structured, almost philosophical critique of horror archetypes, Hell of a Summer is more playful and less systematic. It nods to tropes, subverts a few expectations, but primarily prioritizes entertainment and character engagement over deconstruction. This difference makes Hell of a Summer more accessible to casual audiences, but slightly less intellectually rigorous than some of its predecessors. Another point of comparison is the handling of violence and gore. Classic 1980s slashers often relied on exaggerated practical effects, while modern horror comedies may embrace CGI or stylized violence. Hell of a Summer leans heavily on practical effects and measured gore, creating a tactile sense of danger while maintaining visual humor. This approach aligns it with audience expectations for a hybrid horror comedy, shocking yet playful, visceral but not gratuitous. Where the film excels relative to similar projects is in its character-driven approach. Unlike earlier slashers, where characters were often one-dimensional, Hell of a Summer invests in personality, relationships, and social dynamics. This allows for humor, suspense, and empathy to coexist. Ensemble interactions feel genuine, making the peril more compelling. In comparison to purely comedic horror films like Ready or Not or Game Night, it sustains a stronger through line of tension, proving that character engagement can enhance rather than dilute genre thrills. In summary, Hell of a Summer 2023 borrows wisely from its cinematic predecessors, balancing homage with innovation. It captures the spirit of 1980s slashers, integrates modern dialogue and humor, and injects character depth that contemporary audiences appreciate. While some tonal shifts and narrative beats occasionally falter, the film succeeds in creating an entertaining, self-aware experience that honors genre expectations while contributing its own voice. By situating itself between classic horror, meta-comedy, and character-driven storytelling, Hell of a Summer finds a unique space in the broader cinematic conversation, appealing both to nostalgic viewers and new audiences looking for inventive horror. Hell of a Summer 2023 uses symbolism and metaphor to elevate its seemingly straightforward horror comedy into a layered, thoughtful narrative. While on the surface it presents as a chaotic summer camp slasher with humor and gore, the film consistently embeds visual and narrative cues that deepen its themes and offer insight into the characters' emotional journeys. The filmmakers, Wolfhard and Bryk, employ recurring motifs and carefully considered color palettes, props, and environmental details to create layers of meaning that reward attentive viewing. One of the most prominent symbolic devices in the film is the summer camp itself. The camp represents both nostalgia and the passage from innocence to experience. Initially, it is bathed in warm, sunlit tones, echoing memories of carefree youth and camaraderie. This visual palette contrasts sharply with nighttime sequences, where shadows, fog, and cold lighting transform the same spaces into ominous, threatening environments. The camp's duality mirrors the emotional arcs of the characters. What was once a place of joy becomes a site of fear, reflection, and self-confrontation. In essence, the camp is both literal setting and metaphorical landscape for the transition from adolescence to adulthood. Another recurring symbol is fire. Campfires, lanterns, and torches appear throughout the film, not only serving practical lighting purposes but also representing knowledge, connection, and vulnerability. Early on, the campfire scenes accompany bonding and intimate conversations, reinforcing warmth and human connection. As the story progresses, fire often appears in moments of danger or revelation, symbolizing both exposure and destruction. Its flickering, unpredictable quality mirrors the instability of the characters' social dynamics and emotional states. Water is another visual motif with layered meaning. The lake, a central location, represents reflection, escape, and risk. Early daytime sequences of characters swimming or paddling can be seen as playful and liberating, suggesting freedom from social constraints. Later, nighttime encounters near or on the lake carry tension and foreboding, turning the same symbol into a space of vulnerability. The dual nature of water reflects the precariousness of adolescence. What appears safe can quickly become threatening, echoing the film's tonal shifts from comedy to horror. Color plays a significant role in signaling emotional and narrative subtext. Bright, saturated hues are used in daytime sequences to evoke joy, youth, and energy. As the film transitions to night or scenes of violence, the palette shifts to muted tones, deep blues, and shadowy greens, emphasizing isolation, fear, and moral ambiguity. These visual cues reinforce character emotions and the escalation of danger, often working subconsciously to manipulate audience perception. Objects and props also carry metaphorical weight. Items such as the counselor badges, camp memorabilia, and old photographs are not mere set dressing. They represent identity, memory, and the pressure to maintain appearances. A character holding a badge or adjusting their uniform is often signaling a desire for validation, authority, or belonging, while the deterioration or loss of these objects during climactic sequences mirrors the breakdown of social order and personal composure. The killer's mask itself functions as a layered symbol. It conceals identity, projecting fear and anonymity, but it also reflects the hidden aspects of human nature, the impulses, insecurities, and grudges that the characters carry but cannot openly express. In several scenes, characters confront the mask either physically or psychologically, creating moments that are as much about internal struggle as external threat. Narrative repetition in the film further reinforces metaphorical meaning. The cyclical patterns of pranks, social disputes, and escalating dares parallel the broader theme of generational repetition and the difficulty of breaking free from learned behaviors. Repeated imagery, such as a lone flashlight flickering or a swinging rope in the wind, signals tension but also serves as a visual echo of past mistakes and unresolved conflicts. Even the soundtrack interacts with symbolism. Specific musical motifs accompany character decisions or turning points, effectively becoming auditory metaphors for mood, fear, or impending change. When paired with visual cues like flickering lights or isolated settings, these motifs reinforce thematic resonance without explicit exposition. Silence is another narrative tool employed metaphorically. Pauses in dialogue, moments of stillness in the forest, or characters freezing mid-action are more than suspense-building techniques. They reflect uncertainty, hesitation, and the gap between perception and reality. These silent beats often precede key character revelations or plot twists, signaling internal reflection and heightening audience engagement. The interplay between humor and horror also functions metaphorically. Absurd or exaggerated moments, while eliciting laughter, highlight the fragility of social hierarchies, the unpredictability of human behavior, and the thin veneer separating comedy from tragedy. This tonal duality reinforces the idea that life's chaos is inherent, mirroring the unpredictable landscape of adolescence and emerging adulthood. The resolution of symbolic elements is deliberately uneven. While some motifs, like the lake or the campfire, are revisited and transformed to signal character growth or narrative closure, others, like the mask or recurring background objects, remain ambiguous, allowing viewers to interpret meaning individually. This open-ended approach encourages discussion and deeper engagement, giving the film intellectual texture beyond its surface thrills. Overall, Hell of a Summer 2023 demonstrates a sophisticated use of symbolism and metaphor. Visual cues, environmental motifs, objects, and narrative repetition work in concert to communicate themes of growth, fear, identity, and memory. These elements enrich the story, making the movie not only a horror comedy experience but also a reflection on adolescence, nostalgia, and the precarious balance between innocence and maturity. Viewers who watch attentively will discover layers that reward repeat viewings and thoughtful analysis, uncovering meaning hidden within both the images and the story itself. Hell of a Summer 2023 is not part of a pre-existing franchise, nor is it based on historical events, which gives the filmmakers Finn Wolfhard and Bryk complete creative freedom to construct their narrative world without the constraints of continuity or historical accuracy. However, even as a standalone film, it situates itself within a rich lineage of summer camp slashers and horror comedies, and its references, stylistic choices, and tonal nods create a sense of dialogue with past works that fans of the genre will recognize and appreciate. In this context, the film can be considered part of a broader cultural franchise of horror homage rather than a literal series. One of the ways Hell of a Summer establishes continuity with its cinematic predecessors is through visual and narrative callbacks. From the opening scenes, the film signals its awareness of classic summer camp slasher tropes, isolated cabins, campfires, dense forests, and the iconic lake, but it does so with a modern sensibility that invites comparison rather than replication. The filmmakers frequently insert Easter eggs for attentive viewers, posters reminiscent of 1980s horror classics, props that echo previous slasher icons, and subtle dialogue references that nod to archetypal final girl sequences or classic killer reveal moments. These elements function as both homage and intertextual play, allowing fans to feel a sense of continuity within a larger horror canon even though the story itself is self-contained. The narrative also creates its own internal continuity through character and setting development. The summer camp is portrayed as a place with history, rumors, and prior incidents that give weight to the current events, implying a larger timeline beyond what is shown on screen. Flashbacks and storytelling sequences about previous summers establish a mythos for the camp without the need for prior installments. These moments reward observant viewers, as small details, an old cabin number, a photo of a former counselor, or a cryptic camp rule, gain significance when the plot escalates, creating the feeling of a lived-in world. In terms of timeline placement, the story is deliberately structured to mirror a single, contained summer season. The progression from early carefree days to escalating tension and climactic confrontation follows a logical chronological flow that allows audiences to immerse themselves in the narrative without needing prior knowledge. Seasonal markers, environmental cues, and character arcs all reinforce the passage of time, grounding the story in a realistic, self-contained temporal context. While the film is fictional, it draws on cultural memory and genre history to create a sense of historical continuity within the horror landscape. The filmmakers consciously mimic the pacing, character archetypes, and visual style of past slashers, effectively dramatizing a what-if scenario. What would a modern summer camp horror look like if it were filtered through a Gen Z lens and a comedy-horror hybrid approach? This choice allows the audience to experience familiarity alongside innovation, reinforcing the film's place within the ongoing evolution of the genre. In addition, the film engages with social and cultural history indirectly. The dialogue, behavioral dynamics, and character choices reflect contemporary American youth culture, drawing on themes of identity, social media influence, and generational tension. While these elements are not historical in the literal sense, they document and dramatize the anxieties and cultural markers of the early 2020s, giving the film a quasi-historical snapshot of its moment. For viewers attuned to horror tradition, the film also invites discussion about genre evolution. By incorporating nods to archetypal horror sequences while simultaneously subverting expectations, such as flipping typical gender roles, exaggerating meta-humor, or blending comedy with genuine suspense, Hell of a Summer situates itself as a bridge between past and present. The filmmakers are acknowledging their lineage while staking out their own identity, which is critical when considering its place in the broader horror franchise of cinematic influence. There are also small, deliberate moments designed to create a sense of continuity for fans. For instance, minor characters reference past camp incidents, relics from previous summers appear in the background, and certain shots mirror iconic angles from classic slasher films. These details are not necessary to follow the story, but they reward repeat viewings and enhance fan engagement, much like Easter eggs in a cinematic franchise. The film takes liberties with horror convention as a way of updating the genre, which parallels how historical dramas sometimes adapt events for narrative clarity or emotional impact. While Hell of a Summer is not bound by real-world constraints, it carefully chooses which conventions to preserve, exaggerate, or subvert, effectively creating its own mini-universe that feels coherent and lived in. This approach gives it a sense of historical depth within the context of horror cinema, even though it is an original story. In conclusion, Hell of a Summer 2023 operates as a standalone narrative but situates itself within a continuum of genre history. It acknowledges and references past slashers while creating its own internal continuity through setting, character, and plot details. The careful placement of Easter eggs, narrative callbacks, and visual motifs allows fans to appreciate it as part of a broader horror lineage. While not part of a literal franchise or historical retelling, it demonstrates a sophisticated awareness of genre tradition, rewarding both casual viewers and longtime horror enthusiasts with layers of continuity, homage, and playful innovation that enrich the viewing experience. Hell of a Summer 2023, directed by Finn Wolfhard and Bryk, had a modest production budget of approximately $3 million. The film grossed around $3.2 million worldwide, recouping its production costs and achieving a modest profit. The production values on screen make the film look slightly more polished than its budget might suggest. The filmmakers invested carefully in practical effects, authentic locations, and detailed set design, which gives the film a visually rich appearance without relying on expensive CGI or large-scale spectacle. The summer camp setting is convincingly constructed, and the cinematography and lighting choices elevate everyday spaces into atmospheric and suspenseful environments. Costume design, props and makeup are also well executed, allowing characters to feel grounded and real while maintaining the heightened sense of horror comedy the film aims for. The release strategy was designed to maximize both theatrical and digital revenue. Hell of a Summer opened in over 1,000 theaters, reaching audiences eager for a fresh horror comedy experience. Shortly after its theatrical run, the film was made available for digital purchase and streaming on major platforms. This approach allowed the movie to capture both traditional moviegoers and younger, streaming-focused viewers, effectively broadening its market reach. By staggering its release, the film maintained visibility and buzz, which can be particularly important for mid-budget genre films that rely on word-of-mouth promotion. Marketing efforts were targeted but efficient, leaning on social media campaigns, trailers emphasizing humor and horror, and engagement with horror and indie film communities. The strategy capitalized on the existing fan base of Finn Wolfhard and the film's nostalgic slasher appeal, generating interest without the need for multimillion-dollar advertising spends. The film's promotional materials emphasized its unique blend of horror and comedy, highlighting its character-driven storytelling and clever use of familiar slasher tropes in a fresh context. While the box office numbers may seem modest compared to blockbuster releases, they are reasonable given the film's budget and genre. Mid-budget horror films often rely on strong fan engagement, repeat viewings, and digital sales to achieve financial success, and Hell of a Summer fits this model well. Beyond opening weekend, home video, digital streaming, and international licensing can contribute significantly to profitability. The combination of theatrical release, early digital availability, and subsequent streaming presence ensures the film continues to generate revenue over time, making the project economically sustainable and demonstrating a return on investment. In terms of production efficiency, the film shows that strategic spending can achieve a polished result without extravagant budgets. By focusing resources on high-impact areas, such as practical effects, well-chosen locations, and strong performances, the filmmakers delivered a product that feels richer than its modest budget. This approach underscores a trend in contemporary genre filmmaking, where careful planning and creativity often outweigh the need for expensive set pieces or large-scale effects. Ultimately, Hell of a Summer 2023 demonstrates that a film does not need a blockbuster budget to succeed financially or resonate with audiences. Its modest spending, strategic marketing, and smart release plan allowed it to recoup costs, generate a profit, and reach a dedicated fan base. The film punches above its weight in production value and entertainment quality, showing how independent or mid-budget horror films can compete in a market dominated by larger studio releases. By balancing creative investment with economic efficiency, the film achieves a satisfying level of spectacle and engagement while remaining financially viable. Hell of a Summer 2023, directed by Finn Wolfhard and Bryk, offers a unique and engaging experience that can be enjoyed in multiple viewing formats, each catering to different audience preferences. The way you choose to watch the film can significantly influence your experience, from the immersive intensity of a theater to the convenience of home streaming or the depth of a repeat viewing on digital or physical media. Understanding the options available will help viewers maximize the entertainment value and emotional impact of this summer camp horror comedy, ensuring the film resonates in the way it was intended by the filmmakers. Watching Hell of a Summer in theaters provides the most immersive and communal experience. The film's combination of suspenseful sequences, comedic timing, and carefully staged visual moments are enhanced on the big screen, where audio-visual quality is optimized for cinematic effect. Jump scares, a staple of the slasher genre, are more effective in theaters due to the surround sound and the audience's reactions. Similarly, moments of humor, whether physical comedy or witty dialogue, are amplified when shared with other viewers, creating a collective energy that enhances both the comedy and the horror. The wide shots of the camp's forests, lakes, and cabins gain scale and cinematic depth in a theater environment, allowing the cinematography and production design to be fully appreciated. Viewers can experience the tension building in real time, feeling the suspense alongside the characters as the narrative unfolds. For audiences who enjoy the full theatrical experience, seeing Hell of a Summer in a cinema offers the closest approximation to the director's intended vision, capturing the tone, pacing, and immersive atmosphere that the film carefully constructs. For those who prefer the comfort and convenience of home viewing, Hell of a Summer is widely accessible through several platforms. It began streaming on Hulu on August 29, 2025, providing subscribers with the flexibility to watch at their own pace. Streaming is ideal for viewers who want a casual experience, allowing them to pause, rewind, or rewatch favorite moments without the pressure of a theater schedule. Digital rental and purchase options are also available on platforms like Amazon Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at Home starting April 22, 2025. These options give viewers access to high-quality 4K content and the freedom to either rent the film for a single viewing or purchase it for repeated enjoyment. Digital copies also appeal to viewers who want to enjoy the film across multiple devices, whether on a television screen, computer, or mobile device, offering flexibility that enhances convenience without compromising quality. Home viewing is particularly suited for audiences who may want to watch with family or friends in a more relaxed setting, controlling volume, lighting, and viewing distance to suit personal preference. For collectors or viewers seeking an even deeper experience, physical media offers additional value. Hell of a Summer was released on Blu-ray and DVD on July 8, 2025. These editions often include bonus features such as behind-the-scenes footage, director commentary, interviews with the cast, and blooper reels. Such extras provide a richer understanding of the filmmaking process and allow fans to connect with the creator's vision in ways that streaming alone does not. Physical copies also enable repeat viewings, allowing audiences to analyze scenes, notice visual or narrative details, and appreciate the subtleties of performance, cinematography, and editing. Collectors benefit from owning a tangible piece of the film, while dedicated fans can enjoy the supplementary content that adds context and insight into the production. Selecting the right viewing context depends largely on the viewer's priorities. For those seeking maximum impact, theatrical screenings are recommended for the scale, sound, and communal engagement that a cinema provides. For convenience and flexibility, streaming offers immediate access and the ability to watch at a personalized pace. Digital purchases or rentals strike a balance between quality and accessibility, while physical media caters to collectors and fans who want bonus content and repeat viewing capabilities. Each option has its merits, and the film's adaptability across formats ensures that audiences can enjoy it in a way that aligns with their viewing habits. In addition to format considerations, Hell of a Summer's genre and tone influence the viewing experience. The combination of horror and comedy means timing is essential, and the medium of viewing can affect how jokes land and suspense builds. The big screen allows for heightened tension and collective reactions, while home viewing may emphasize dialogue and character interactions, letting audiences appreciate the subtleties of humor and performance. Physical media and digital copies provide opportunities to revisit scenes, reinforcing jokes, foreshadowing, or thematic elements that might be missed on a first viewing. Overall, Hell of a Summer 2023 is designed to be versatile in its consumption. The film's theatrical release, streaming availability, and home media options ensure that it reaches a broad audience while allowing viewers to choose the context that best enhances their experience. Whether seeking the immersive thrill of the cinema, the convenience of streaming, or the richness of collectible editions, audiences can enjoy the film fully while appreciating its blend of horror, comedy, and nostalgic homage to classic summer camp slashers. By carefully selecting the viewing format, viewers can maximize engagement, deepen understanding, and enjoy the unique storytelling, character development, and visual creativity that make Hell of a Summer 2023 a standout in its genre. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.